So here we go. Pat's having a quick drink of tea. And I'm Kay Newton, for those who are new to the group, and welcome. Well, we're just going to have a Don't Get Me Started session. Pat and I are really good friends. We have these amazing Zoom calls, and when we do them, we always, at the end of it, say, we wish we'd recorded that one. So this one, we've actually pressed the record button before we started talking. And we've really come together because I've just done this amazing expedition, eXXpedition, with these amazing ladies and 9 crews, so 11 of us all together, sailing around virtually around the coast of South Africa, talking about plastic pollution and toxicity in our oceans and how that's affecting us. Here is Pat, and Pat is our in-house menopausal expert. It's the person I always turn to when we're talking about all things menopause. And we've got talking about the subject of body burden. This is a phrase that came up during the voyage a lot. And I think a lot of people are studying body burden in relation to young people and fertility, but they're not really studying it in relation to menopause, perimenopause. And I thought it'd be really good to just come in and drop in some of the stuff that we've learned so it can go into the group and people can pick up the knowledge and ask questions, because asking is the big key. Pat, you start. What's the biggest body burden in relation to perimenopause and menopause?
Well, I just want to say, isn't it great that every time we think we know everything we need to know about something, we go off and learn something else? I mean, I am, having written 5 books now about menopause, I think, oh, I've done it. And then something else comes up. And this whole body burden thing is partly about the fact that women's hormones aren't studied that much. I mean, women's health isn't studied that much because men's health is apparently so much simpler. And, you know, women's health is like men's health, but it has cycles in it, which of course is so wrong, because what are thought of as our reproductive hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are actually doing other functions in our bodies as well. That estrogen is involved in 300 functions in our bodies. So that if we're not looking after our reproductive health, if we're not looking after those hormones, it's not just our reproductive health that's impacted, it impacts everything else as well. So when I'm working with people, it's really like that holistic. I know that sounds a bit, not holistic, you know, but if we don't look at the whole person and what's going on with them, we don't know what the burdens on their body are. And some of it comes from what we're eating. You know, it's very easy to dissociate your food from other stuff that's going on in your body, but your food is giving you the building blocks. If you're not putting the right things in, your body can't make the things it needs to do to support you, and that changes over time. So what you needed when you were growing up to your teens is different to when you're going through puberty, is different to when you're in your reproductive years, and then when you get to menopause, because different stuff is going on in your body. Now, I know you've been doing a lot of work on plastics. And surprisingly, I mean, I talk about estrogens and phytoestrogens, which are plant estrogens, which are things we can use to supplement ourselves at this stage. But in plastics, there are xenoestrogens, and they are the bad ones. They're the bad guys, because they're in the chemicals of plastic, and they aren't supplementing your estrogen, they're actually working against it. So when you're buying things that are wrapped in plastic, when you cook in plastic, so I put that comment on your Facebook page, Kay, about that I'd stopped heating things up in plastic because it releases the xenoestrogens into the food, and we don't exactly know what they're doing. But more and more I find, if I've had something in the freezer for a while, in a plastic container or a plastic bag, when I get it out, I can smell something from it, not the food. I can smell the plastic it's been in. So as well as heating plastic, I don't know the science of it, but it feels to me like those chemicals are releasing into the food when it's frozen as well. And then of course you've got to heat the food up from frozen.
Yeah.
So yeah. Tell me more about plastics.
No, well, it's a story that I really want to keep this conversation to 20 minutes, and I know it's going to be virtually impossible. So there's lots of things that I learned about plastics. One of the things I hadn't realized, well, two things, but one is that, you know, we talk about eating it, ingesting it, but we can also take it in our environment. We don't realize that we're actually breathing it in. I think that was quite frightening when I made that realization that we have so much plastic in our world now. 70 years ago, we didn't, but now we don't even need to have plastics in our home as such, and we can still be breathing it in. And the other big thing was the body burden. So what they did was on one of the first round the world voyages, on one of the first legs they did for eXXpedition, is the girls were tested, they had their hair samples tested, all a range of ages. One lady was 61, I think, and most of them were in their 20s and 30s. And it was interesting to see how the 61-year-old had more of certain toxicities in her body, whereas the younger had other things that we didn't have when we were 20 or 30. They hadn't been invented. So they'd not been ingested into our bodies, but were now showing up. Hence, there's a certain problem with reproduction. You know, they're making a big realization. They thought in COVID, you know, we were going to have a baby boom for all sorts of reasons, but one of them being that our bodies are no longer functioning in the way that they were 50 years ago. Very, very interesting, I thought. And the other thing was the fact of epigenetics, that we have it in our system. We've produced children and they have got it from us in their system, and they will pass it on to the next generation and continually. It doesn't leave our bodies. Some of it does, most of it doesn't. So once we've got it in our system, it's there to stay. And that leads on to all sorts of other issues, you know, not just making menopause symptoms and perimenopause symptoms bigger. Well, we think so, but we don't know because we've not really studied it. But it's leading to thyroid issues, liver issues, heart attacks, some certain cancers. And you know, we just haven't got the data enough to be able to say, you know, definitely it's because of this. And so the best thing we can do is sort of avoid it. She's frozen on me. That's maybe my side of the as she's coming back. You froze for a little minute. So I don't know if you want to add something to that, Pat, on that sort of topic. Goodness. I know we're going to be.
There's
don't
so
get
much
me started. Here we go.
So we know, you know, if you ever watch any archaeology programs, you know that they can tell where people have come from by the chemicals that are still in the body of like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000-year-old people, knowing the chemicals that were in the water or in the land. So it's, as you say, it's not like this stuff goes away, it gets coded up into our systems. And the whole subject, I mean, epigenetics, there you've opened up a huge can of worms.
Exactly.
Because we used to think you've got this like genetic profile and that's who you were. But the fact that some genes only express in certain situations, it's like a ball rolling down a hill and it can go in one of two directions, and depending which way you tilt, it goes in that direction and the gene gets expressed. So loads we could talk about there. But on top of that, I mean, you've mentioned what we're going through with the pandemic and the stresses and strains that's put on people's systems. And we have this system in our body. As I said, you know, our reproductive hormones are doing so much work for us. And I only learned recently, this is my new piece of learning, was that progesterone, which is one of the reproductive hormones, and it gives us a bit of a mood lift. You know, it's that hormone that comes into the system when we're in our periods. And it's actually manufactured in your adrenal glands. And I would point at them, but you can't see. They're kind of in your, like around your waist area. And you would think of your adrenals as producing adrenaline and cortisol that are released with stress. And during this time of lockdown and worry about the pandemic, a lot of people have felt more stressed. And that the chemical blocks that help to make up adrenaline and cortisol to help you deal with the stress, they're the same chemicals that can be diverted into actually helping you make progesterone. But the body will want you to produce adrenaline and cortisol if you're feeling stressed more than it wants you to have the progesterone. So it steals the chemicals from the bit of the body that makes that in order to make the stress hormones. So in times of stress, like the burden of stress on you and how your genetics express in times of stress, you're stealing some of the chemicals away from the part of the body that would be supporting you more at menopause and using it to produce short-term stress hormones to help you to deal with what's going on in the moment. So it's like taking out a payday loan and then you've got to pay it back an extra because suddenly you're in real deficit. So our systems are so complicated. That's why we have to think of ourselves as a whole and why we have to manage what we're eating, what we're drinking, our stress levels. These things have a huge impact on our well-being when you're trying to get pregnant, when you're perimenopausal, and when you're postmenopausal.
I love that point. You know, we've talked a little bit about stress in the group, and you know, there are, if you go into the section that we've got on, and I can never remember the word, in, it used to be files or something. Anyway, in there's sections that,
resources,
resources, whatever. My words are not very good today. So if you go into that section, there's about 3 amazing videos on stress there. I love doing this, but what I've found in the past is now we frighten people. You know, we've done all this and they've gone, oh my God, you know, what am I supposed to do? So let's just look at what can you do? What are some of the simple steps you could take if you're thinking that there's a possibility that what we've just been talking about could be you, and what can you do to solve it?
So one of the simple things, I think, in terms of where we are at the moment and managing your stress in order to support your body, is thinking about what you are in control of and what you're not, and putting your focus on what you are in control of. It's easy to stress yourself out and get anxious about things that you can't control. Whereas if you put your focus on what you can control, you feel it helps to make you feel more confident and more at ease. So if you're going shopping and somebody's not wearing their face mask and you get really angry and upset, you're not in control of that person. You're in control of your own health. You know, separate yourself by 2 meters. Make sure you're wearing your face mask. Don't touch anything that they touch. You're in control of your actions and your response to it. You know, you're not in control of your government and what they're doing. You're not in control of what the shop's policy is. Stick to what you're in control of and put your focus there so that you can manage your own emotions and not waste it on getting angry or frustrated with other people that you can't do anything about. That would be one of my first things.
I love that. That came up in eXXpedition as well. You know, we were very fortunate on Watch 4 to have a group of people who were involved in environmental studies from South Africa come into the call and talk about, you know, the frustrations that they have with attempting to deal with the plastic, so, you know, plastic and toxicity in their country. And afterwards, we put together a board with post-it notes on of the stuff that we'd learned. And when you look at it as a whole, it was overwhelmed, frightening.
Yeah.
It's like there's all this stuff that needs to be dealt with. What do we do, you know? And that was one of the big takeaways I had from the whole experience was don't worry about it. Focus on the one thing that you can change today. And it only has to be that one thing because that will make a difference. So in my post today, I said that I took my little jam jars off to the market because I was adamant I was not going to buy nuts anymore in plastic. And I said to her, I said, would you fill these up for me, expecting her to go, no, no, no. She said, oh, of course, I'm so pleased you brought your own jars. It's like, yay, this is really good. The fact that she had to get them out of plastic in the first place is an issue, but we're getting there. I solved one part of the long chain of issues that we have in relation to plastic. I didn't bring any home. I stopped at 2 of the stores and got offered my things into plastic bags, and I went, no, 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 thank you, I don't need them. Don't need the bags. It makes you feel really good that you've achieved. It's that story which I brought up yesterday as well in the meeting yesterday, of the one starfish. The group's covered in starfish, and the little boy picks up one and throws it back, and his granddad says, why are you doing that? Why are you bothering? There's thousands of them on the beach. And he said, well, it mattered for that one, and it mattered for that one. And, you know, I think if we all just focus on one thing at a time, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, the other day I noticed, you know, that you'd been looking at the number of cigarette butts on the beach and gathering them up. And I went for a walk into that little wood that, you know, where we've been, and where there's a little wooden bench in the wood, lovely. And around it were a whole load of cigarette butts. And I thought, seriously? And I came back, and the next day I went equipped with a plastic bag to put them in. Sorry, it was a plastic bag, but, you know, and my plastic gloves, obviously. And when I got there, somebody had already picked them up. So I thought, well, that's brilliant that someone else got there and thought, oh, no, I can't leave this, because it's that, you know, like if you leave that, then somebody else will think it's all right to leave theirs. Whereas if you keep clearing it up, hopefully the message gets through that we don't use this as a giant ashtray. And it's just that little thing that you're in control of, and you don't know what the knock-on is from it.
No, you don't. And when we're talking about our body burden, I think that's really important to think about it in the same way, isn't it? So there's been a lot of talk from the new video that's just come out on Netflix, Seaspiracy, which has caused a huge uproar, and people have gone, I'm never eating fish again. But even if you do eat fish, then make sure you don't eat the top predators, the tuna and the swordfish, because they've got huge amounts of mercury in them. Mercury is another one of those toxicities that don't leave the body. Yes. And it can cause, again, not enough real serious research, but it can cause huge mental problems, possibly causes Alzheimer's. You know, so even just making that little switch, even at our age, if you were one of those poor children who got attacked by the English dental school system and your mouth is full of amalgams, think about having them removed. You know,
don't get me started, Kay, because I think when I went to the dentist, they were paid by the number of fillings they did. So guess what? We got a lot of fillings, and my more mercury fillings. Now, a lot of them have been replaced now, but, you know, the gas that comes off of them is not good for you. No. I don't think there was that much wrong with my teeth.
Yeah, it's been, I'd said earlier about the chemicals, how they've affected the younger generation. It's fluorinated compounds for them that are becoming the issue. And they don't know where that's going to lead. We just know that low doses can be harmful. So the more you can do to remove it from your life, and it's an impossibility, you won't be able to do it. But at least if you can reduce it, even if it's just one plastic bag at a time, it will make a difference.
And don't get us started about cosmetics and toiletries.
Yeah, cosmetics is a big one again, and that, you know, again, you're talking neuro damage. Mainly skin lightening creams are the big one. Some countries like EU have banned them, but in other countries they're not banned, and you know, they can have serious issues. Again, it's later on in life. You just don't know what you're doing to yourself now. that can have a knock-on effect when you get older. So
yeah, so natural cosmetics, natural toiletries, because we laugh when we think of the Elizabethans putting like white lead on their faces. Who would do that? And then we don't
we're
even
doing
know
it.
we don't know what crap we're putting on our faces. We read the label and it's like phenobila dilatona boswellox, and you think, oh, that must be okay, and you've got no idea.
Yeah, rule of thumb, I always say, if you can't say it, don't pay for it. And it's not completely correct, because there are some of those very, very long words that you can't say that are actually natural and not harmful. But in general, if you can't say it, don't pay for it.
Because a lot of them are petroleum extracts.
Yeah, definitely look on the back. Just like we sort of got told, and it became a little bit of a habit to look on the back of the packet and go, E numbers? No, seriously, too many E numbers in that. I won't get by that. It's the same thing with our toiletries and natural products, you know.
And back
natural.
to that one thing, Kay, like if you've got all your toiletries and you think, oh no, okay, so what's the next thing you're going to buy? Are you almost out of shampoo? Well, could you get a different one? Have you got, you know, where's your face cream? Are you about to buy a different lipstick? Just buy one thing when you replace it that isn't full of all sorts of chemicals that you don't know what they are.
Yeah. I don't know how long we've been chatting, but I think
I don't know, probably ages.
It's a natural place to stop. I think that's really good and really useful for the group. So this will go in for tomorrow's May Day challenge. Pat, I know people can find you in the group because you're quite often in the group. You comment and you join in and you come to coffee. But if they wanted to talk to you one-on-one about menopause, perimenopause, and all this stuff, because you are definitely the guru much more than I am, where can they find you?
They can find me, well, they can email me, pat@patduckworth.com. That's easy.
Yeah.
And my patduckworth.com website. And if you go on Amazon, you see all these books. And there's another book in the making, Kay.
Yay! Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Pat. That's really, really kind of you to come jump in like that. And just let us know below if you've enjoyed this, because Pat and I do love talking to each other. And we do love the concept of Don't Get Me Started. And yet we keep saying we will make a series of these. If you like it, let us know and we'll do another one for you. Thanks very much.
Don't get us started.
I'll end it there.